Okay, this is our last video for the reproductive system, and we left off talking about embryological development. So it's interesting to point out that the zygote is the first cell that comes from being fertilized. And then cleavage starts to occur, which means rapid division of the cells. And when we get to about 100 cells, we call it a blastula. And inside these blastulas are going to be different germ layers. So we have our ectoderm, which is going to be the nervous system and the skin. We also have the mesoderm, which is going to be forming various muscles, different kidneys and blood, gonads, and then the endoderm is going to be forming your digestive system and lungs. So trophoblasts are part of the blastocyst that develops projections called chorionic villi. This is what's going to combine with the mother's tissue to form placenta. And this is going to be surrounded by fluid called amnion. So that is your amniotic sac, if you've ever heard of it. So this is very important for just maintaining a nice stable environment for the developing embryo. The amnion is going to be attached to the placenta by the umbilical cord. Very cool picture here. You can see the amniotic sac surrounding the embryo in fluid, and then you can see the umbilical cord that's going to be attached to the placenta. And this is how the embryo is going to be receiving nourishment. That's an amazing picture. Childbirth. So what happens when we're ready to give birth? Well, parturition is the actual term for, the medical term for childbirth. And really, doctors can pretty much determine when this baby is going to be born. It's usually within 15 days of the due date. So give or take 15 days of the due date, they say, is pretty normal. Anything past a couple weeks of the due date, they're probably going to induce labor. And labor is the series of events that are going to be able to expel the infant from the uterus. Remember that labor is a rare feedback mechanism because it's positive, and it's caused by the release of the hormone oxytocin from that pituitary gland. So your hypothalamus, remember, is going to actually make the oxytocin and store it in the posterior pituitary, which will release it into the blood. The oxytocin targets the uterus and causes the myometrium to start to contract. And we continue this, and we actually increase it until the birth of the baby. That's why when most women start to give birth, the contractions are very far apart and they're not very strong. And then by the time they're ready to push, the contractions are one after the other, and they're much stronger. So labor is divided into 3 stages, and first is the dilation stage. So this is where the actual true contractions of the uterus starts to happen, and then this is when the cervix becomes fully dilated at 10 centimeters. This is the one that's going to take the longest to occur. You know, some women are in the hospital for 12 hours just waiting for the cervix to dilate enough so they can start to push. And like we said earlier, the contractions as the dilation stage progresses are going to become longer, and they're going to become more vigorous, and the infant's head is going to start to push up against the cervix. Stage 2, this is when the cervix is now fully dilated at 10 centimeters, and the infant is going to pass through the cervix and vagina to the outside of the body. So this is when we're actually pushing now, and it's not really going to last a super long time. It usually is only going to be about 20 to 50 minutes, and the infant will normally come out head first, and this is because it will help with breathing. And then the last stage is called the placental stage. So once the child is born, the placenta actually will detach from the uterine wall and then come out about 15 minutes later. And it's really important that the placenta becomes removed because it can cause various problems after birth. So here we go. Stage 1, dilation. The uterus is going to start contracting. The cervix will dilate to 10 centimeters. The uterus walls begins to kind of vigorously try to push the baby out. Expulsion is the pushing phase, 20 to 50 minutes. Your cervix is fully dilated. After the infant is born, then we have the delivery of the placenta about 15 minutes later. That covers the entire reproductive system. I hope you enjoyed it. Now you can go ahead and complete all of your assignments for this lesson.